Normally, I would gavel in, but everybody is already waiting patiently and quiet. So it is Monday, March 4th, 2024, regular meeting of the Windsor Heights City Council. Roll call.
Jones here. Michael Libby.
Here.
Ron Campbell.
Here.
Teresa Harms. Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, America, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, before approval of the agenda, I want to pull 6D. That's the Sister City funding request. I need more information to provide to you before asking for that. So with that, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Can everybody hear me in the back? Is that better? How about now? Now?
Can you hear me?
You mess with that and they mess with that. On Zoom. Just ask everybody to speak up.
I'll speak up. All right. Item 3A, public hearing on the 2025-2035 capital improvement plan.
Motion to move, to open the public hearing?
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
AJ.
There's no changes to the capital improvement plan from the last city council discussion. I would just note the funding source for 68th Street South was originally intended as a GO bond that would be issued here later this calendar year. The revenue source is now anticipated to be TIF. So that's the only change, is the potential funding source there. And then with 74th Street, a move from cash to a 2025 GO bond. Those are approximately the same cost projects. We're switching those out with the change in funding source and the qualification of 68th Street to TIF.
Which one was the GEO bond?
Be 74th Street in 2026.
Thank you.
Otherwise, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Adam, real quick on the geo bond, or I'm sorry, we're in public hearing. I'll wait, sorry.
Is there any public comment on the capital improvement plan?
You're not all here to comment on,
Is there a motion to close the public
So
hearing?
moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
yes,
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
3B, consideration of the capital improvement plan.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
So quick question on the moving the 74th Street to the geo bond. Does it make sense to do that any sooner? Remind me that geo bond, is it exclusively for 74th Street or are there other projects?
At this point, our intention would be to issue a bond in 2024 for 73rd Street North and 68th Street. Both of those would be paid for via TIF.
Uh-huh.
And then at a future bond, likely isolated, would be 74th Street. Now, as we move through these projects and we see costs, it's possible that with 74th Street could move to a cash project and we would push back the bond to cover 67th and 64th. But right now, that's how things are looking to be lining up. We'd
Okay.
like to consolidate as many of them as once to limit the issuing costs, but right now, we're not comfortable borrowing out for all three of these projects, given the timeline.
Okay, that answers my question, what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Further questions or discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Susan Skiris.
yes,
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
yes,
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Item 4, public forum. This is the time for set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. No action may be taken. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to no more than 5 minutes. Public comment? Hearing none. Consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Item 6A, consideration of resolution number 2024-16, a resolution approving the site plan for Casey's General Stores at 6961 University Avenue.
Move to approve.
Second.
AJ.
I'll turn it over to Trey, our contractual planner with Bolton and Meg, to give a presentation outlining the process today. And then I think he'll turn it over to his colleague to talk through the traffic study.
Hello, everybody. I'm Trey Rouse, acting city planner with Bolton and Mank. So we are talking about the Casey's at 16, proposed Casey's project at 6961 University Avenue. Next slide. Applicant Casey's Marketing Company with property owner Charles and Ruth Colby National Development Trust. The current and previous uses of this property, commercial retail, proposed use is auto services, and it is located in the urban center district. So existing conditions on this property, 1.29 acre lot with a currently sitting 16,700 square foot building that accommodates retail and office space, constructed and completed in 1972. The structure has maintained the same footprint since the original construction. It has two parking lots on the north and south side of the primary building and structure. Both have had various updates recently. And the applicant has gone through the process of obtaining a conditional use permit acquired for the parcel to allow for auto services use on the property. A little bit more background. This parcel has been a commercial space since its construction, 1972, and on record with the Polk County Assessor. This multi-office building has been a location and held several different forms of businesses, but is currently only 45% occupied. The summary of the proposed project is proposed use auto services Casey's convenience store, proposed 4,238 square foot building with 25 parking spots for service. There is a driveway on University that is a right in, right out, and then a full driveway access onto 70th Street. North of the site, in between the residential district and the proposed site, there is landscaping and proposed fence buffer, and then east also site fence and landscaping. Then I have the proposed site plan and layout sheet that you can see. And then I have a secondary one that outlines the landscaping as well. And then moving to land use compatibility and zoning requirements. So to the north of the property is a single family residential district, the R1 district, and is used for single family residential. To the southeast and west are the urban center districts, but uniquely to the east is currently being used for single family residential. And then I have the list of urban center district zoning requirements, such as lot area, lot width, front yard setback, side yard setback, rear yard setback. Those are newly created for the urban center district that we talked about when updating the zoning code. Then moving to the comprehensive plan, looking at future land use and the proposed use within the 2017 comprehensive plan identifies this area as commercial use and more specifically calls out commercial and office uses that are typically more auto oriented. And so moving to the future land use map, the area is outlined a little bit difficult to see, but this proposed use does fit within the commercial future land use category with the auto services use being proposed. Within zoning, again, or within the urban center district, this district is defined as district recognizes the mixed use character primarily along the University Avenue corridor, which is the principal route through central Windsor Heights. The district contains a combination of residential, commercial, and office uses and is known for its walkability and Main Street feel. So this is a conditional use within this district, and the applicant has gone through that process to obtain the proper permit. So going over a little bit of the process that has happened thus far with the zoning board of adjustments, the applicant met with zoning board adjustments on both January 17th and February 21st of this year to hold public hearing and obtain a conditional use permit for auto services to be used on the property located at 6961 University Avenue. The result, the applicant obtained that conditional use permit with additional conditions. For the Planning and Zoning Commission, the applicant met with the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 28th of this year to hold a public hearing and be recommended for approval with or without conditions for the proposed Casey's convenience store site plan at the site address 6961 University Avenue. The result, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial of the site plan to the City Council after discussion, presentations, and the public hearing. Moving to staff conclusion and recommendation. The proposed use at the location is permitted by conditional use permit by the current zoning district. Said permit has been acquired. The site plan follows the zoning district requirements with a couple comments from city staff to be adjusted, to be corrected with approval. And is in compliance with the future land use map and comprehensive plan for Windsor Heights. So the city staff recommendation, after review of all documentation, recommends that the city council approve with conditions on the site plan recommended by staff. And then I have those comments and conditions above. The first set is general comments, and then the remaining comments are engineering from the engineering department. Then if you have any direct questions for me, I do have Jennifer McCoy online, so she can talk through the traffic study that was done and her review of it.
Hey Trey, one quick question. So did you receive the comments from citizens that were submitted through like today?
I have.
Okay, did you have any other additional recommendations based on any of the comments that came through today?
I did not. The ones that came through today, I did not get a chance to see.
Okay.
The previous ones.
Okay.
I have looked at.
Okay. Adam, did you have any other additional thoughts or considerations based on the comments that came through today from residents?
I do not have any additional recommendations to a change of the site plan. I
Okay.
certainly appreciate everybody's thought and consideration that they've provided to the
Yep.
city to date.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure that we, anything that came through additionally today that we were thinking or considering or would make recommendation as we are approving. So, okay,
Absolutely.
all right.
Trey, a question on the traffic study. Was this I understand it was a peak traffic study,
Yes,
not a 24-hour traffic study?
correct. Yep.
Thank you.
And then Jen will be able to answer more specific questions if you have any others.
Are there any more questions we'll hear from Trey again, but are there any more questions right now for him?
Right now.
Okay, we hear from her.
All right, thank you. Okay. I'll just say next slide as I get to that. So, hello, my name is Jennifer McCoy, and I am a senior traffic engineer with Bolton and Mink. Today, I am going to provide a summary of the Casey's General Store Traffic Impact Study. I did not prepare this study. I have just been the one to review the study and provide comments. So just wanted to make that clarification. If you have questions about the study, I have a copy of it here and I will do my best to answer it. I believe the applicant or the applicant's engineer whose company did prepare the study is also available to answer questions pending what they are. So next slide, please. So here's a
Well, there's muted or so.
Yeah, she froze. The camera's frozen.
Jennifer? Yeah. Jennifer? Okay. No hurry. We'll give her a minute to see if she comes back on. If not, we'll move to the applicant, if that's all right.
Like we should have elevator music.
All right. Applicant, Casey's, Aaron?
My name's Aaron Wolf. I'm a site development manager for Casey's, and the property owner would like to address the council first before I give some comments. Yeah. Thank you, Aaron.
So my name is Brian Sheriff. I'm president at Colby Interests. Is this working right?
Yeah.
We good? Okay. Thank you for your time and consideration tonight. I appreciate everybody's attention on this matter. And I'd like to just share a little bit of history about the site. Some of those stats I think Trey shared as well, but I'll go through some of the history and how we've gotten to where we are today. As you know, Colby's are heavily invested in Windsor Heights and wish to continue to invest in Windsor Heights. And the Colby's have owned this property since it was farmland. And in 1972, this property was developed into the office retail property that currently exists today. And we all know what happened through COVID in 2020. At that time, prior to COVID, our second level of office was already experiencing some struggles with finding tenants for the upper level. But when COVID hit, we all know that had some effects on a lot of businesses nationwide, also locally. Specific to the office property type, that was a property type that was hit particularly hard as companies found ways to allow their employees to work from home or work remotely, and the need for office space slowly has retracted since then. In fact, I say slowly, but it's actually been pretty quick. So office tenants are not renewing their leases like they would in the past. In many cases, office tenants are downsizing the square footage when they have a chance to release, or some are walking away from their spaces altogether. And what happens is the existing inventory of office property stays the same, or office square footage, while the number of users for office space is declining. So then office property owners have been lowering their rents to try to attract a decreasing number of office tenants. And what we're seeing at our property is a decline in occupancy. We've seen that since COVID. In August of 2021, following COVID, we invested $47,000 into the parking lot, both the front and back. We resurfaced that in an effort to help attract and retain existing tenants. So unfortunately, that investment went unrewarded and occupancy continued to decline. And we stand today at 45% occupancy. And that revenue isn't enough to cover maintenance expenses at the property and the tax liability. So we're sitting in a situation where we have a problem, an occupancy problem to solve in an office property that doesn't have a lot of the amenities that many other office properties do. Wellness facilities, elevators, covered parking, and it's not ADA compliant either. So we face an uphill battle, which we've been trying to solve since 2021. And at that time, we went out to try to find the very best user that we could find for this site to bring to Windsor Heights. And I'll tell you, this was not a quick, simple or careless process. We took a lot of time, had a lot of conversations, went through a lot of soil testing, hit roadblocks with many users, had potential with many users. And in that time, we spoke with Walgreens, CVS, Cane's Chicken, Chick-fil-A, Slim Chickens, Ivy Fast and Fresh, Quick Star, among others. And we learned, you know, this property is not conducive to a lot of uses due to its size. You know, without expanding it, some of these are not options for us. Some of these folks or businesses aren't interested in coming to this location. Some that are interested in coming, we didn't feel were a good use or a good shine the greatest light on this area and gave us the best potential for economic vitality into the future. So we're thrilled that Casey's is interested in this site, and they've done soil testing and evaluated this site, and this site works well for them. And we think that they are the best option we have found for this site. We think they're a great fit for this community. They'll provide convenience. They'll complement the needs in the area. With a 105 unit apartment complex coming, you know, we'll see a growing need for convenience and fuel. So we're excited to invite Casey's to our City of Windsor Heights. We admire the way Casey's participates in the communities where they're located. We're impressed with Casey's and how they've shown a willingness to work with the desires and nuances of the Windsor Heights community. We're thrilled that Casey's has found a way to help us with a detention for water on this site. This site currently is 75% impervious, meaning 75% of the site, at least 75% of the site, water runs off of. It's not retained on the site, which heads downhill 69th Street and eventually finds its way to Colby Park, where we know we have flooding issues and concerns. So I think it's a great benefit to us that they found a way to detain water on this site. And we're also excited, Casey's has found a way to make it more pedestrian safe with what their site plan is than it currently is. So lastly, I'd like to share that Colby's owns a lot of property in this immediate area. In fact, 2 properties at this same intersection, one directly south, 6900 University, and one kitty corner across the intersection, which is Bankers Trust. So we're extremely interested in a bright future for this area, and we want to see continued economic growth. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to a healthy and productive discussion.
Again, my name's Aaron Wolf. I'm a site development manager with Casey's. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our project and our site plan. From time to time, it might be useful to pull it up on the overhead, but I'll let you make that request at your discretion. Casey's has submitted a site plan for a convenience store and gas station at 6961 University Avenue here in Windsor Heights. We conducted a pre-application meeting with the city in April of 2023. And in the ensuing 11 months, we've been refining our site plan and working through the city's submittal and review processes. And the project involves demolition of the aging office infrastructure on the lot. And upon completion, it will nearly double the property taxes generated by the property and will generate significant local option sales tax benefits for the city, both of which will help to reduce the property tax burden placed on your residential property owners. Our site plan shows changes to the current access locations for the lot. The access to University Avenue will be reconfigured to a right-in, right-out access and will be moved further to the east to increase the distance of that access from the intersection. The southernmost access, current access on 70th Street will be removed entirely. And the northernmost access to the lot on 70th will be realigned to line up with the Hy-Vee access. All of those are being done to meet current code requirements and to increase traffic safety. Sidewalk on 70th Street is currently located immediately at the back of curb. Pedestrians avoid using that sidewalk because it doesn't feel safe to be so close to moving traffic.
Will you put it up, please? So that the crowd can see it.
Again, I'm describing some of the current conditions. And the current condition is that sidewalk is immediately at the back of curb. And I was explaining that makes a pedestrian feel unsafe. We're going to move that sidewalk to the east to create distance between street traffic and pedestrians to make that sidewalk safer and a more inviting walking path. We're also showing a direct path from the sidewalk to the storefront at the southwest corner of our building. And that again provides a safe path of travel to the store without having to walk across the parking lot. We've provided street trees along 70th Street to shade the sidewalk and provide a more inviting and comfortable walking path in the hot summer months. These are all means and methods of increasing walkability as identified in your comprehensive plan. Our site plan indicates use of a buffer with a 6-foot solid privacy fence between our property, or excuse me, the Colby property, and the north adjacent single-family residential district. We also share 50 feet of the east property line with property zoned for residential use to the north and east. We intend to utilize a row of evergreen plantings to meet the buffer requirements at this location. The remaining 250 feet of the east property line is shared with a property that is occupied residentially, but identified on both the current zoning and city's future land use maps to redevelop in the future as a more intense use. However, our site plan does show using evergreens and retention of approximately 80 feet of existing solid fence to help buffer the current residential use of that east adjacent property from our use. There was discussion at both the Board of Adjustment meeting and the Planning Commission meeting about installing a 6-foot fence along the entirety of that east property line, and we're happy to go in that direction should it be the desire of the council. As Brian alluded to earlier, we're reducing the impervious area of the site from 76% hard surface and rooftop to 70%. We're providing stormwater detention on a previously undetained site. We utilize a system of underground detention cells that are shown at the southwest corner of the lot that are designed to meet the city's stormwater quality and quantity requirements of code. We're encouraging stormwater infiltration and releasing stormwater slowly to the city's storm sewer system to improve water quality entering Walnut Creek and to help eliminate flooding and stream bank erosion. We've met your code requirements for parking, landscaping, signage, and site lighting. The city recently adopted new code regulations, increasing the percentage of brick required on a building that fronts University Avenue, increasing that percentage to 75%. And we've deviated from our prototypical architectural design to ensure that we've met those code requirements with regard to brick. We're also showing brick canopy columns and a brick dumpster enclosure. Gas station and convenience store is an allowed use of the property by issuance of a conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustment. They considered our request on February 21st, and the board approved a conditional use permit after finding we met the standards for approval outlined in the city's code. Last week, we did appear before the Planning Commission, and after lengthy discussion, a motion was made to approve our site plan, and that motion failed. Throughout the process to get to this point, many of the public comments that we've received have centered largely around concerns regarding fuel vapors and spills and traffic. I want to take a few moments of your time to address some of those issues up front. I know we can always circle back and expound on those later. With regard to fuel vapors, there are EPA mandated vapor collection requirements for our fuel delivery drivers to control the release of vapors in the atmosphere. And since the early 2000s, vehicles come from the factory equipped with onboard vapor recovery systems that collect vapors from your tank of your car at the time of refueling. Those vapors are directed to a carbon canister within the automobile and are combusted in the engine while your vehicle is in operation. These are all methods to control the release of fuel vapors on site. With regard to spills, we have a number of systems in place to prevent and respond to chemical spills, and those systems are full of redundancies. Our tanks and fuel lines are double walled and equipped with sensors to monitor and detect leaks. All fuel lines are equipped to automatically shut off the flow of fuel if a leak occurs. All tanks are equipped with an overfill device designed to prevent the tanks from overfilling during a delivery. We have automatic emergency stop switches to shut off power to the entire fuel system in the event of a fuel spill. And in addition, all store personnel are trained and equipped to handle spills. We have team members on call 24/7 to support stores with spills and contact emergency response personnel. With regard to traffic, it sounds like we'll circle back and get some commentary on the traffic analysis later on in the meeting, but I also provided you with some supplementary information ahead of tonight's meeting to put some of the traffic numbers you're going to hear into perspective. Are you able to pull up, there's a blue and white table with some traffic numbers?
Called trip generation table in the packet.
So this table, and perhaps you can make it a little bigger. So this table indicates the amount of traffic that will be added to the surrounding road network, not just for a convenience store and gas station, but also for other allowed uses of the property. The numbers in the table are estimated using trip generation data formulated by the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual. And that table illustrates that our use actually adds less traffic to your road network than many of the other allowed uses of the district. And that's because the majority of our customers are persons who are already on your road network and headed to other destinations. We rely primarily on pass-by traffic. And that table shows the number of new trips added to the surrounding road network by our use would be 20 new users in the AM peak hour and 24 new users in the PM peak hour. And that's not every hour of the day, just the peak hour in the morning and the peak hour in the evening. Restaurant uses, office or other retail uses will add a greater number of new trips to your road network. That's because they're destinations. They don't rely on pass-by traffic as much as they draw traffic from outside your community. They attract customers who would not otherwise be on your road network. When you compare the number of new users generated by a convenience store to that of other allowed uses in the district, you will see a convenience store will add less traffic than nearly all of the other uses shown on the table. And so what I'm trying to underscore for you tonight is that the property owner intends to redevelop this property regardless of what happens here tonight. And to deny our use because of a perceived increase in traffic is a logical fallacy when nearly every other use of the district will result in a greater number of new vehicles on your road network. I also want to point out that any other use will be constrained to the same access restrictions that we are. Any other user will be restricted to a right-in, right-out on University, one full access on 70th aligned with the Hy-Vee access. Therefore, the same traffic patterns will be present regardless of the use. To conclude, your comprehensive plan allows the use. Your zoning code allows the use in the district with a conditional use permit, which we've lawfully obtained. Both your comprehensive plan and your zoning code were passed and approved after public process and with public input. The city's consulting engineer has reviewed the traffic analysis, and in their staff report, or in the staff report you were provided tonight, indicated the analysis shows that the traffic created by the Casey's project would not create further issues with the current congestion noticed by the University Avenue and 70th Street corridor. And that's a quote taken from the report. The site plan is presented to you tonight with a recommendation to approve from your staff. And we want to be a part of the Windsor Heights community, and we also want to be here for good in Windsor Heights. I'm joined tonight by our consulting engineer, a member of our real estate team, and our environmental team. We also asked a district manager to join us here tonight. We're all available to answer any questions you might have of us.
Initial questions?
Would you be, my name is Michael Libby, Mr. Wolf, would you be amenable to putting in level 3 charging stations?
Electric vehicle charging stations is not something we've shown on our site plan. We've studied the issue internally. We've determined the demand is not there yet to justify the expense. And certainly, I think that we will see many technological changes occur in the charging methods between now and the time that demand tips. We are amenable to perhaps installing some conduit to make installation of the electric vehicle charging stations easier in the future.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. First of all, thank you for coming and
Sure.
preparing this. I know that I feel like there's more information tonight than the plan and zoning and more from the Board of Adjustment. So I know that you're listening to the questions and comments that you're getting. In October, our council unanimously passed a resolution to be carbon neutral by 2030, which is one of the most aggressive in the state, if not the most aggressive. Would Casey's consider putting solar panels on the building to help us work towards that goal in our community?
That's something we haven't considered to date. It's not something that staff had, they haven't breached the issue with us prior to tonight.
Sure.
You know, I think it's something that we can continue to discuss throughout this process.
And I appreciate this on community impact report that you've provided as well. What kind of involvement can we expect to see from Casey's here in Windsor Heights directly? In addition to all this other good stuff that you're doing too.
Sure. You know, we'd like to be a part of the communities that we serve. You know, we look for opportunities to get involved, and I understand, you know, you have a number of different community events that we would like to maybe perhaps sponsor or be a part of. You know, and perusing your website. And in fact, I just live in the adjacent city of Urbandale, so I've maybe participated in some of these events, but you have a fall festival for certain that, you know, we would perhaps like to be a part of, and I don't know what that might look like, but certainly, you know, we're open to having those discussions with the city. I know you've got a Nights in the Heights movie night that takes place in the summertime, and you know, that's something that maybe we might be able to get involved in. Whether that be through I don't know, a pizza sponsorship or something of that nature. And of course, you've got, you know, your Wonderland or Windsor, excuse me, it's a tongue twister, Windsor Wonderland. And I can foresee us maybe participating in that as well, maybe sponsoring some hot chocolate donations or something of that nature.
And I just have then one more question that I'd written down. So the first Board of Adjustment meeting was back, I think it was January 17th. And there's been public comment since then. Have you been able to engage with residents since those, you know, the initial pushback, I guess, to the proposed site plan?
Yeah, so after the first Board of Adjustment meeting, I have met with the north and east adjacent resident, Steve Lowe, and the north adjacent resident, Philip Cole. Met with them on site to look over the site plan and discuss the site plan, talk about their concerns. I know Mr. Lowe currently has access through the lot. We discussed possibly constructing a fence along that east property line, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. I know he's here in the audience with us tonight, so he'll let us know otherwise, but I know it was his desire not to have a fence at that location because he likes to pass through the lot to get to Hy-Vee. But, you know, we talked with Mr. Lowe for a good maybe 25, 30 minutes about our site plan and what his concerns are. Like I said, Mr. Philip Cole was there as well. You know, after the Board of Adjustment meeting, when the board made their determination, I had multiple members of the Board of Adjustment say they would like to meet with me over a coffee and just discuss the site. Met with them separately at Grounds for Celebration. Just talked about maybe some design elements that could be incorporated into the site should the city want to steer it in that direction. That was, of course, after they had made their decision, not prior to them making their decision to grant the conditional use permit. I've met with the police chief and the fire chief just to see if they had any concerns about the site. Of course, they're part of the site plan review process, but I know there were some initial concerns about crime generation. I wanted to circle back and talk with the police chief specifically and ask if there was anything we could do differently with regard to site design that might aid in the response to an emergency situation, and had a similar conversation with the fire department just to make sure that they didn't have any concerns about our use or the function of our site. Yeah, so those are all some attempts that we've made after meetings to reach out to different members of the community, the neighbors, and officials.
Any other questions?
I do.
that council members asked for. Because I don't know if Aaron's not willing to brag about, I mean, if you look up their sustainability report, the 2023 Casey's sustainability report, they put over 30 solar panels on the refrigerated truck trailers. They have over 138 charging stations at 29 locations across the Midwest. These are at stations that are right off the interstate where travelers are looking to travel for distance, not just community here and there type traveling. They donated over $5.2 million to the communities that they participate in. And they have donated a total of 30 million meals to the communities where they reside. So, and that's just some of the stats. So I don't want you to miss your chance to brag, Aaron.
Well, they had specifically asked, about the solar panels and, that's something we hadn't considered at this location, but certainly there are some initiatives that we've undertaken, throughout our collective footprint. We've initiated the use of solar panels in our refrigerated delivery trucks to help offset the energy need to keep the goods cold while in transport. I made a few other notes on here if you want to talk more about how we've used solar to offset energy demand. But I think that, you specifically asked if we had thought about putting solar panels on this store. And that was something we hadn't thought about. But what we have done in other locations is I made a note here. I wanted to talk about it, but we've paid into an energy bank. At 42 stores, we participate in community solar gardens. We purchase an amount of solar and wind generated energy from the garden, and that's used to offset 25 to 100% of the energy uses for our sites. And so, we don't currently utilize solar panels in any of our stores. It's something we haven't thought about at this location. But certainly, we do have measures that we incorporate throughout our footprint of 2,600 stores that help to offset the energy demand, and we buy into solar banks as one such way that we do that. And again, I mentioned how we've installed solar panels in our refrigerated trailers, but energy efficiency, all of our new stores are built to meet or exceed energy codes. We utilize energy efficient HVAC equipment, LED bulbs, and energy efficient windows and doors. This just scratches the surface. We've got a sustainability report online. It's about a 60-page document that I can refer you to later if you'd like to read more about it. But certainly, we are concerned about the environment. We believe in trying to conserve energy where we can. And while we haven't looked at putting solar panels on this store, there are other methods that we've incorporated throughout our footprint to help incorporate solar in reducing energy demands. So,
Good context. Thank you. Thank you.
Barry?
Let's see here. I know that at the planning and zoning, you talked a lot about walkability and what you would be willing to kind of add in for walkability in front of the Casey's there on University. So just kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about that. You talked about adding shade trees for the pedestrians as they walk through the sidewalk area, correct? Is that?
Yeah, that's something that we're showing in our site plan on 70th Street. We're showing the use of shade trees. Walkability, it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. Of course, it's a stated goal of your comp plan to embrace an expansive view of walkability. And your comp plan states that includes creating a pleasant walking environment by providing shade and good street side aesthetics, and encouraging uses, commercial uses within walking distance of residential. I believe a very attractive component of our site that increases walkability in your community is the substantial green space that we've got at the front corner of the lot. Code allows us to pave 100% of that lot, but we've chosen to maintain that green space there. And when you look at it, it almost represents an oasis of green space in the sea of concrete from the adjacent properties between the Hy-Vee and the Aldi. We're showing a substantial green space there, 7,300 square foot. It's about 64 foot by 125 foot footprint. We'd be happy to talk to the city about, anything else we could do at this corner to help increase walkability. I know that in your comprehensive plan, it talks about seeking out areas for public art installations, and we'd be happy to dedicate an easement to the city at that corner where you could perhaps install a public art to help improve street side aesthetics and increase walkability. But I did mention at the top several things we've already done on the 70th Street side to help meet your walkability objectives here in the city. And, certainly we're open to those conversations.
Just wanted to touch base because I know at the planning and zoning, you talked about like the public art
Mhm.
and benches and, kind of making this maybe a little oasis type area and, could we put,
And unfortunately, we just haven't been able to gain any traction in those conversations. We've been battling against the use allowed issue and as I reported, the use is allowed by issuance of conditional use permit. I think we've litigated that repeatedly. I think now, we'd be open to the conversation about, how can we make this work best for the city? How can we help meet your walkability objectives and goals and, maybe steer this in a more positive direction about how we can meet the city's goals toward walkability.
and I know that there was some concern, I can't remember if it was planning and zoning that it was talked at or the Board of Adjustment. I think a few people are having some hard times figuring out how the tanker is going to be able to come into the property. And I'll be honest, I was at another meeting at the same time, so I wasn't able to look at the diagrams. I was just listening to it. So is there kind of just a quick, DOS for Dummies type thing as how the tankers will come through and not block the traffic on either University or 70th or 70th?
So the fuel tanks are shown on the east edge of our site here. We've modeled the site so that fuel trucks will enter the site here and be able to drop fuel at this location. They're able to do it in a way that it doesn't obscure traffic flow through the site. There is the ability to enter the site from University Avenue and exit from University Avenue as well. We have to run turn templates to make sure the site, we're able to navigate our fuel and grocery delivery trucks. And we've shown that we're able to navigate the fuel and grocery delivery through the site from University Avenue, right in, drop the fuel, reverse back out and exit on University Avenue. It was, accessibility of the site was also a concern of the fire department. They need to be able to make sure that they can get their fire apparatus into the property in the case of an emergency. And so they've reviewed it extensively and determined that they're able to navigate their fire trucks through the site as well. Yeah, so we have looked at that. The site is navigable right in, right out off of University.
Then I should have added this in the walkability, but you talked about the sign. There was a little bit of talk about the signage for Casey's out front. There was concern that it was 10 feet tall.
Yeah, so we've got a advertising sign at this is not the concept that appears in your staff report that we submitted, but this is an effort that, we would like to talk to the city about. Part of some of the language in your comp plan talks about incorporating design elements throughout the University Avenue corridor, repeating common design elements. And we've noticed that you do have multiple columnar features throughout the corridor that incorporate these. I think there's a brass inlay that has the W and H for Windsor Heights on it. I think the concern that maybe you were alluding to was that the sign is 10 feet in height. Of course, the ordinance allows a 10-foot tall sign at that location. This doesn't change. I think, in fact, what we're showing here is maybe the sign might decrease in height to 8 feet, but it incorporates a columnar feature that echoes some of the common design elements found throughout your corridor. And again, that didn't originally appear with our application, but just we're listening to what the planning commission and board of adjustment have to say, I'm reading your comprehensive plan, this is something that your comprehensive plan calls for is to help create an identity along the University Avenue corridor by repeating common design elements. And so this is something that, again, we haven't really been able to steer the conversation in this direction. How can we create a site plan that helps you to further achieve some of the goals and aspirations outlined in your comprehensive plan. Maybe some of those things that aren't codified, they're not code requirements. And certainly this hasn't been codified, but it's a direction that, we could possibly go in if this is something the city council thinks would serve the city well.
Kind of answered two questions with my question
Okay.
so thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure. Thank you again, Mr. Wolf, for doing this.
Sure.
Did Casey's look at any alternative plots of land in Windsor Heights?
We've looked at multiple sites here in town. I know most recently we looked at the southwest corner of 63rd and University, prior to the multifamily use that you have going in that location today. My tenure at Casey's isn't long, so I can't speak to some of the other locations. I think that perhaps we looked at a property on Hickman, and Mike's with the real estate department. Mike, did you want to come up and talk about some of those other locations? Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name's Mike Bryant, Senior Real Estate Manager at Casey's. So Casey's has been trying to come into Windsor Heights for many years, probably pushing a decade. I've been here for, it'll be 9 years later this month. The one other location that I know Casey's has looked at was over on Hickman and 63rd Street where QT bought some land. But now that whole property and project is getting redeveloped into a car wash and some other uses as well. And so right now, this is the only other property that we found that meets our need. Where we believe the traffic is currently there with all the guests coming and traveling through the university corridor. We believe our brand is a good brand, especially here in Des Moines, being a publicly traded Iowa company here located in Ankeny. We feel like the community knows what Casey's is. A lot of people in the town are actually leaving your guys' community to go get our pizza in Windsor Heights or Clive. I know on a map, it looks like we're not too far away from some of those other locations. But when you look at drive time and actually locations of where our other stores are, this site actually helps minimize the travel time and keeps the tax dollars in your guys' community. So that's what I wanted to add.
So if I'm understanding that correctly, yes, you have looked at Hickman and 63rd, and you found that not as desirable. Traffic was not
No, at the time, I don't know, it was a different real estate manager at the time, and we weren't able to come to terms with that property owner. And then from what I'm aware of, QT bought that land and then they weren't able to get their site plan approved. For what it's worth, wasn't it?
I don't
No.
think so.
Okay.
We'll move on.
So, all right, just another.
That's another long story that we'll just move on.
Another quick question. I think, Mr. Wolf, you indicated this started with the city about 11 months ago.
Yes.
I do a daily business newscast, and so it's my business to do business with people. And I interviewed Dr. Del Gines, who's with the International Development Council. And I asked a question about being upfront with what happens when there's conflict between government and city residents. Who should you listen to? And he said, you need to listen to both, but what needs to happen is a long-term runway to the final destination. And I believe that some of this consternation from some of our residents may have been mitigated had this conversation been happening with them 10, 9, 8 months ago, rather than several weeks ago. And we're still finding people who knew nothing about this up until just last week. So why weren't we upfront with the citizenry earlier on?
I mean, certainly when we approach a city, with regard to building in town, you know, we follow the city's lead, the lead of city staff. You know, and if we take our cues from the city as far as, you know, what they would like to see with regard to public notification, certainly, you know, this isn't a rezoning, or rezoning wasn't required, and in which case there would have been maybe a more lengthy process of, you know, three public readings and a public hearing and 3 readings of an ordinance to rezone a property. It would have been a more drawn out process that might have offered more opportunities for public involvement. I think as it stands today, you know, there have been multiple opportunities for public comment. We've appeared before your Board of Adjustment on 2 occasions and before your Planning Commission. And now here we are before the City Council. I mean, each of these, I believe, is advertised as a public hearing, and a notice is sent out to adjacent owners. I know, I believe maybe the mayor himself had advertised the public hearing on his own website, imploring people to come to the Board of Adjustment meeting. You know, so I would disagree that there hasn't been ample advertisement about the site plan. You know, and certainly, like I said, we follow the city's lead when and if they request that we make further public outreach efforts, certainly we would do so.
So the failure is on the city.
I'm not calling it a failure.
Thank you, sir.
I just want you to clarify again, trucks are gonna come in from the east, go north into the parking lot, deliver the gas, and then they're gonna reverse around the pumps and then come back out onto University.
That's right. We've got a turn template modeled in that fashion. And it's been reviewed by the fire department as well, and they're able to make the same turn movements with their fire apparatus. I don't think the turn templates are included with the site plan. I do think that I've got a fellow Casey staff member perhaps on the line. Eric, are you able to source those turn templates and make them available? Perhaps we could share your screen. Okay. Let me see if I can't make those turn templates available by the end of the meeting.
Any other questions? Adam, do we have Jennifer back on?
Yeah, I think we're.
Thank you. Jennifer, are you back on?
Okay, yes. Hi, I am now able to unmute myself. I am here. So I also have a backup. I have my cell phone ready to go as well. So if we hopefully
Oh, boy.
No.
No way.
Is it possible?
can you hear me?
Yeah, you have an echo now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
That'd be a great ad for Verizon.
Okay. All right. So thank you, everybody. I am going to do this from my cell phone, but I can hear you guys fine and we can screen share. So we will just make this work. So, okay. So as I mentioned, I'm Jennifer McCoy, Senior Traffic Engineer with Bolton and Mink, and I'm here to kind of present an overall summary of the Casey's General Store Traffic Impact Study. Next slide, please. So this is the location of the proposed Casey's at 70th and University. And we have the intersection of 70th and University is signalized. And so is the intersection immediately west of there, which is the Hy-Vee and all the Hy-Vee traffic signal, and along with the Aldi's. And then we do have 2 kind of side street stop controlled intersections within the vicinity of the proposed Casey's store as well. Next slide. So this slide shows the daily traffic volumes at the intersection. I just wanted, this information came out of the traffic study, and I just wanted to kind of show this so you can have an idea of how traffic is different on these 2 roads, right? The University carries approximately 10,600 vehicles a day, with 70th Street carrying a little over 4,800 vehicles a day. Next slide. So one of the questions that came up was the idea about access and allowed access. So there wasn't anything specific in the city code relating to driveway spacing. There's information related to kind of driveway design and kind of driveway construction requirements. So when cities don't have something more specific, we often rely on SUDAS, which is the statewide urban design standards for the state of Iowa. And so these are standards that are used across the state for urban areas. So I just kind of want to point out, so for a minor arterial road, the distance from an intersecting road to the driveway, this is for a full access driveway, meaning you can make all movements out of the driveway, is 170 feet. For a collector road, it's 100 feet. Next slide. So on 70th, their existing Hy-Vee driveway and also the proposed Casey's driveway are approximately 175 feet from that intersecting street, which is University. So that does meet the minimum distances provided in SUDAS for a full access driveway, which both those driveways are. As you look at University, the proposed access is 110 feet from 70th Street, which would be the intersecting street, which, as I mentioned, University being arterial road, it would need to be 170 feet per SUDAS for a full access driveway. So the way that kind of having less distance was mitigated was by the right in, right out. Because the biggest concern with a full access driveway that's less than those minimum desired distances is the left turns. The left turns in and the left turns out. So having the right in, right out helps to address or mitigate the fact that there's not that 170 feet from the 70th Street signal. Next slide. Next, I wanted to talk about queuing. And I'm going to talk about the 95th percentile queues because that is what was provided in the traffic study. And then the 95th percentile queue is defined to be the queue length that has only a 5% probability of being exceeded in the peak hour period. It's a useful parameter for determining appropriate length of turn pockets, but is not typical of what an average driver would experience. So when we see these lines on this map for the AM queue and the PM queue, this is what the length of queue that has only a 5% probability of being exceeded. It's not what happens on average every cycle at the intersection. So I just wanted to kind of note the importance of that. So these are how the queues are existing. AM is in green and PM is in orange. And you can see here that on 70th Street in the PM, we do see the 95th percentile queue queuing back to that existing Hy-Vee access. However, on University, we do not see queuing going back to the existing signal at Hy-Vee, and we don't see it for eastbound, and for westbound, the AM and PM is pretty similar, extending over to 69th. Next slide. So I wanted to show, these are the queues with Casey's. So the dark green is the AM queue with the Casey's, and the red is the PM queue with the Casey's. And so you can see for westbound University, there is not much difference between the AM with the Casey's versus the AM existing, or the PM with the Casey's versus the PM existing. We do see, and this would be similar also for northbound 70th. You don't see much difference between the AM and the PM with or without the Casey's. For southbound 70th, we are seeing that the queue is anticipated to increase by 25 feet or about 1 car's length over what it is today. So there's queuing occurring today. There's queuing anticipated to occur in the future. And then for eastbound,
This is probably where we see our greatest difference in queue. We actually see that queue with the Casey's increasing up to 4 vehicles or 100 feet. But even with that 95th percentile queue, which has that 5% probability of being exceeded, we are not seeing that queue back up into the existing signal. And the reason I bring that up is when we need to start getting concerned about queuing is when queues on average, not just the 5% probability, but on average are starting to back up and spill back into other intersections, right? Because then you just start getting gridlock. That is not what we're showing here. So per the information provided in the report. Next slide. So this is this table that was presented by the applicant before. And I think the thing I wanted to kind of talk about with this table is you can see how the convenience store strips in some cases are less than trips from other uses. And I think the biggest piece of that is because when it comes to convenience stores, about 76% of the trips that visit a C-store are trips that are already on your road. So they do change from being a through trip to being a turn, right? They turn into the driveway, they turn back out of the driveway, but they're already there. It's not brand new trips and new congestion to these roadways. Next slide. So in summary, per the report, queues will increase for southbound 70th Street and westbound University by 1 car length. And eastbound queues will increase by up to 4 car lengths in the PM peak. The 95th percentile queue in the PM peak for the southbound approach will increase by 25 feet, which today is 200, so it could be up to 225. And that Hy-Vee access drive is approximately 175 feet from University. Queues could extend back and block the Hy-Vee access drive on 70th Street at some times in the PM peak. Remember, that's that 5% probability chance. But on average, the queue that an average driver would experience, those queues per the report are between 75 and 140 feet for the southbound approach. So that would not block the Hy-Vee access drive on average, per the information in the report. In addition, the report shows the intersection of the Hy-Vee and proposed Casey's access on 70th Street operating at a level service C or better. In fact, it's operating at a level service A in the AM peak and level service B in the PM peak. So what that tells me is that vehicles are still able to exit those driveways onto 70th Street in the PM peak, even with the queuing occurring at the University Avenue intersection. If that queue was occurring regularly and through the whole peak hour, that whole intersection would gridlock and we wouldn't see the level service C or better that the study is showing. The queuing analysis in the report shows that the queue on westbound University will extend beyond the Casey's new right-in, right-out access on the AM and PM peaks by 1 to 2 car lengths. Again, that's the 95th percentile queue. So that's showing that there could be some times when there could be more vehicle stacking on the Casey site, people that maybe can't get out onto University right away. Operations at 70th and University are level of service F today in the PM peak, and the Casey's does create additional delay at the intersection. However, per the report, queues are not expected to extend back and block the Hy-Vee signal on University. And any development on that corner will bring more trips to these intersections. So regardless of what goes there, there will be a change and there will be more traffic at this intersection. So that's just with that, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll open it up with kind of any questions or discussion.
Questions?
Yes, Michael Libby here. I believe I asked this earlier, why there wasn't a 24-hour traffic study done.
Sure, I can tell you that it's typical to look at the peak hours for a traffic impact study, because the peak hours are the ones that carry the most amount of traffic and also have the most amount of trips associated with them. So what was provided is not non-typical of what is provided in a lot of other cases, because it is looking at the worst hours of the day.
Thank you.
What are the peak hours? I'm sure you have them listed here, but just digging through all the papers.
Yes, yep, I do have them here. So the AM peak hour is 7:30 to 8:30, and the PM peak is 4:30 to 5:30.
Thank you. 4:30 to 5:30.
When was the data collected for the peak hours?
The peak hour counts were done in April 2023.
And then did you have data for the other times as well?
So they collected data between 6 AM and 7 PM in April 2023. And then they provided information for the AM and PM peak hours in the report.
Any other questions?
Hey, Jennifer, this is Councilmember Harms. Just a quick question. Do you know how the car counts compared to previous University Avenue car counts that we've done, traffic studies we've done in the past? Did you look at any of the previous? I'm just curious of what, if the car count is consistent with ones that we've done in the past.
I did not specifically look at that. I think the most recent count we would have would be pre-COVID. Like the university study was done pre-COVID, so kind of right around that time. So I don't know we'd have anything really to compare it to. And even the Iowa DOT, the last time they counted was 2016. So this is kind of our most recent count for this corridor.
That's fair. Thank you. I just was curious. I did think about that, the last university one, and I was just curious because I know we did a couple of different. We also relied on our AT cameras for car count, so it did have value. Thank you.
Any other
Yeah.
questions? All right, we can move on to public comment at this time. So if there are any members of the public that would like to comment, please come up to the podium, name, address. Try to comment. Not everybody at once.
So my name is Adam Lathrop. I live at 1716 Plaza Circle. And maybe Jennifer is still on, but I've got a question or a comment just in general about the traffic study. So if I understand that right, it's a 5% chance that we could see those queues, which doesn't sound like a lot, but as I'm thinking about that in my head, that's a 5% twice a day, once during the AM and once during the PM. So it's 5% per hour, right? Jennifer?
Mr. Lathrop, we're not gonna, in the sake of moving things along, we'll take down, we will make note of your question.
Okay.
And we will, at the end, we'll ask, but we're not gonna
Perfect, no problem.
do a question and answer.
All right,
That's
very
all.
good. Appreciate that. So that was just I just wanted clarification on that. And then the second thing that as I was thinking about the traffic was the 65 car pass through that Casey's expects to have stop. In my mind, that's 65 cars that are going, less cars going somewhere else. And so are we at that point looking at a possible 65 cars less at Come and Go. And my concern's not Come and Go. Believe me, I'm not a Come and Go fan. My concern is what happens when Come and Go no longer has enough business to stay open, and do we run the risk of having a closed gas station on the corner of 70th and University? That is my concern. And then finally, and thank you, Councilman Libby, for bringing this up. The Colby gentleman mentioned that, you know, our behavior has driven a lot of why this change needs to be made, given the reduction of office space. I will say, as a gentleman who actually recently tried to rent office space, it is not cheaper than it was the last time I looked, but so if we're looking at behavior as a reason to make this change, then I would argue that behavior should be considered in what goes in there. Given the fact that the Biden administration has given a goal for 50% of all cars be EV by 2030 and 66 by 2032, it makes me wonder what the need is long-term for another gas station. And given the fact that we're not looking at putting charging ports in there, again, does the behavior support what we're looking at doing here? So with that, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve Lowe, 1214 68th Street. As I listen to people talk about walkability, I guess I'm not sure exactly what everyone considers walkability. Does that mean your ability to walk around your block? Or does that mean a resident's ability to access the city's facilities, the parks and the recreation areas? Because I will tell you that someone who lives on the north side of University, accessing the park and those things, walking, is entirely different than if you live on the north side. I've lived here for near 40 years. When I was younger, I walked down to the park. I now have younger neighbors pushing strollers and what have you who used to walk to the park. As University has been changed to 2 lanes, if you're old enough, you'll remember the old video game Frogger. That's kind of what it's like to cross University now. So you see people making a decision when they get to University. Do they go down to 70th and try to cross with the light? Or do they come up to 66th and try to cross? Now remember, you have 2 toddlers and maybe 1 in the stroller. And instead of just crossing the street and going to the park, you're making several more blocks out of the way. If you put this Casey's at 70th Street, that's going to make that unwalkable from people on the north side of University trying to get to that intersection so they can use the stoplight. Walkability doesn't mean the same thing to everybody. It means something entirely different to me than what it did 40 years ago. And right now, unless you're a high school track star on the north side of University, you're probably not going to successfully be able to cross the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Julie Earhart. I live at 1029 68th Street. And as a resident south of University, I can say that there are times when I leave my home and I have sat for more than a couple of minutes trying to get westbound onto University. I have seen traffic backed up from the Dairy Queen to 66th. From 66th, I see taillights all the way up to 63rd. I feel for the residents. I don't know what the layout will be, certainly for the apartments that are coming in. I actually considered looking into moving there, and I thought, how the heck am I going to get any place? Because traffic is bad enough on University. So I see an increase if I stay in my home, which I've been here since 1969. I will literally come over to 66th Street, come up this way and use the stoplight. That's an option now for me. More and more people will have trouble turning westbound. If we're on the south side going westbound, I even see congestion and time to go eastbound. So as traffic not only increases here on 66th Street, as a resident, I have concerns if I needed medical help. How is police and fire going to be able to get to me in a more timely fashion? Where the heck are they going to go? People use the center turn lane as their own personal lane. I have witnessed it many times from 66th down to turn into the Walmart parking area. And I'm flabbergasted. I have a concern for increase in traffic accidents. Frustration levels will rise with it. And certainly I like Casey's Pizza too. So it's not against that at all with that. I just would hope that there would be a better use of that property there. But I still think there's going to be traffic congestion and problem no matter what. So thank you for your time. I'm glad I came this evening and I appreciate you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience?
You have one on Zoom.
If you are on Zoom, please state your address and your name. Go ahead. Who is it, Adam?
Stephen Wilson.
Stephen Wilson, you can go ahead, please. Stephen Wilson.
Hi, can y'all hear me now?
We can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. Well, my name is Stephen Wilson and I'm the regional manager over at Bud Mary's on 7239 Apple Valley Drive, not too far from the proposed site that we are discussing this evening. I'm also a member of the Windsor Heights Chamber Committee, and I'm here today to ask the esteemed members of the City Council to approve this site plan for the Casey's. The addition of a Casey's in our community will help stimulate economic growth for Windsor Heights. It will create job opportunities for local residents and boost unemployment rates and enhance the livelihoods of our citizens. It's also going to generate additional tax dollars in the area, creating further opportunities for investment in our community. Additionally, the increased foot traffic drawn by Casey's will benefit the surrounding businesses, helping to foster a thriving local economy. I have personally spoken with several business owners in our area, and every single one has expressed support for this. Windsor Heights is a landlocked community. It can't grow outward. As a result, we must continue to find ways to invest in our community and the businesses that choose to operate here. Casey's is renowned for its commitment to community engagement and philanthropy. Through initiatives such as their Casey's Cash for Classrooms and their Casey's Pizza for Good, they actively support local schools and charitable organizations. By partnering with Casey's, we can further strengthen the fabric of our community and make a positive impact on the lives of those in need. And in terms of infrastructure, Casey's has a renowned, proven track record of adhering to rigorous safety and environmental standards. They've invested in state-of-the-art technology and practices to minimize their ecological footprint and ensure the well-being of the communities in which they operate. I have no doubt of this, and I hope that the City Council members, with all of this in mind, will see that having a Casey's in our community is objectively in our best interest and in the best interests of the businesses that call Windsor Heights home. I trust your vote today will reflect that commitment to the continued economic future of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment online?
Oh, that is it.
Any other comment from the public?
Bob Bishop, 1128 64th Street. Two quick comments regarding data. One point of data, if you locate 3 gas stations within a half a mile of one another, the average price of fuel goes down 2 cents for the citizens of Windsor Heights. The other study is from the National Institute of Health regarding the location of 3 gas stations within a half a mile. The study has shown that cancer rates increase 5-fold for those residents living close to those stations. That's prompted many cities to implement zoning ordinances that prohibit gas stations within 100 to 300 feet of schools and residences. I just want to make the council aware of those things, and I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr. Bishop.
Other public comment? Brian, Aaron?
Like this back up.
Yeah, I think if there's anything,
Certainly there was an opportunity to find those turn templates. Adam, are you able to pull those up at this time? Yep. There's some question about whether or not we could make those turn movements that I described earlier. This is a grocery delivery truck and it shows a right-in access to the site. It looks a little different than how I described. They go around the island and back up into the loading dock there. That's the entry movement coming from the east. If you can page down, there should be 3 more turn templates there. Grocery out shows that the grocery delivery truck is able to exit right out onto University Avenue. If you go further down, there's just 2 more turn templates. This is for our gas delivery truck, a similar movement there. Right in, right out.
Just a quick question. So the gas delivery, the vehicle is not backing back out onto University?
Not according to that template. When I described the back end, it was the grocery delivery truck that was the template above.
Gotcha.
See how it backs into, well, there, it pulls head in to that space and makes a different movement on the way out. Yeah. I don't know, do I have the floor to address any of the comments at this time? Certainly Mr. Lathrop talked about 5,200 residents and 3 gas stations and what will happen if a Casey's goes in here? Does that mean another gas station will close? We perform a very thorough market analysis for every store we construct. If we can't realize a return on our investment, we wouldn't waste our efforts here. We wouldn't be here tonight. But I want to remind you that this community may have only 5,200 residents, but you play host to a number far greater in any given day. You have visitors who pass through your community on the way to Des Moines, West Des Moines, Urbandale, and the other suburbs. You have shoppers who travel to the destination retail stores like Walmart and Sam's Club, Aldi, and Hy-Vee. You host workers for all those businesses as well, and many others. And if these people are going to be using your roads and commanding a need for your police services while they're here, shouldn't the community be gathering as much local option sales tax from those visitors while they're here, rather than telling them to fill up their tanks in one of the other suburbs? Because that's what I've heard previously is there's a Casey's a mile this way and there's a Casey's a mile that way. Rather than sending those sales tax dollars to your neighboring suburbs, why don't you harness those sales tax dollars and use them to repair the infrastructure that those visitors are wearing down while they're here in your community? So that was a comment regarding to address some of the questions presented by Mr. Lathrop. Certainly we can circle back and talk about walkability if you'd like. I don't know that at this time I have any more comments, but I would welcome the discussion if we want to talk about walkability. With regard to, I think a resident, Julie Earhart, commented about traffic backup and what adding another business at this location will do to the traffic situation. Legally, you can't deny the property owner a development right. They've expressed a desire to redevelop the property, and if not a Casey's, then it will develop as something else. And per that chart I showed you previously, our use generates less new traffic on the surrounding road network. And in that regard, it addresses those concerns about adding delaying further traffic delays. And with regard to the study cited by Mr. Bishop, I can't comment on that because we weren't provided that study in advance, so I can't testify to the veracity of the study. Certainly, the venting for our tanks is beyond the 100-foot that Mr. Bishop had commented. Maybe not the use or the property line, but certainly the venting is beyond the 100-foot mark. I'd welcome this opportunity to answer any more questions that the council might have of me.
clarify. The amount of new, when we're talking about the chart, the blue chart with the new trips. There we go. The amount of new trips that you're focusing on. That is, less or lower or comparable to other proposed uses, right?
That's what I'm showing in the table there. Less than many of the uses in the table.
Overall, it's the second highest of all other proposed uses.
Those are the total number of visitors to the site, but not the total number of new users added to your road network.
Right.
So, right, those are all trips that are already on your road network. Of the, let's see, I can't see the top of the chart there. We can pull that down a little bit. No, well, we're going a little too far at this point in time, but so a convenience store at this property is expected to experience 82 vehicles entering the site during the AM peak hour. Of those 82 trips, 62 are generated by pass-by traffic. Again, traffic is already on the road network, and 20 trips are new users added to the road network. And that's during, those are those entering the site. So yeah, there are more trips that will visit our site than some of these other uses, but we're taking advantage of traffic that's already on your road network. We're not adding more traffic and adding more delay to your overall road network.
Well, you are creating more, I think, shall we say, conflict points by more entry, exits. It's not just focusing on the new traffic.
Sure, and that was the nature of the study, and I believe what your own engineer had testified was that it wouldn't add a significant issue or further delay.
Any other questions?
Just for clarification, Aaron, so this Casey's is amenable to providing an easement on the southwest corner for public art if it was requested by city council.
Depending on the size and location of the easement, of course, we talked about we want to be able to maintain visibility of our store, maintain visibility of our sign. But again, I've read through your comp plan, and one of the aspirations is to identify locations for public art. This seems like an ideal location, something that, it would be, again, in the spirit of cooperating with the city and helping to fulfill the aspirations of your comprehensive plan, for us to identify a location on the site there for you to place a public art feature. Now, we haven't discussed what the size of that easement might be, but again, we would want to maintain visibility of our store and visibility of the sign.
And Casey's is amenable to the enhanced monument sign design as well, potentially?
Right. We had pulled up a exhibit earlier, and again, reading through your comprehensive plan, there are some aspirations of your comprehensive plan to establish an identity along the University Avenue corridor by repeating certain design elements found throughout the corridor. And as I've been around your city, I've noticed there's various different columnar features, all of them or most of them brick, and they incorporate the use of I believe it's a bronze plaque with the W and H in it. We would like to repeat some of those features into our sign to help further some of your aspirations of your comprehensive plan.
And Casey's is amenable to putting conduit for chargers, but is not amenable to putting in chargers at this time?
At this time, the demand's not there, and I would hate to see us invest in some infrastructure that then became dated. And, as the technology matures, I think we're going to see changes in the technology. And I think that the demand's not there to make the investment at this point in time. Certainly, we haven't identified where those locations might be on the site, but we would be amenable to placing conduit to make it easier to install EV chargers in the future.
And is Casey's in good faith willing to explore solar on top of the building?
I don't know that I can make that commitment today, just because it's something we haven't discussed prior to today's meeting. But of course, if you want, I can further expound upon some of the efforts that we take across our 2,600 store footprint regarding how we have incorporated solar energy. That's something I don't see us, I certainly see us continuing to do in the future. I don't think that I can make that commitment today.
Explorer was just my question, I
Explorer?
guess, yeah. Anyway, food for thought. And then final comment, I think this had come up previously, but you had looked at bringing the building footprint closer to university, correct? But that was not feasible, or could you? just
Because
talk
of
to that
the
real
way
quick?
that the site drains and the access limitations that we have, I know that there was a comment at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that one of the Planning Commission members asked, would it be possible to flip the site plan so that the building fronts University Avenue or immediately fronts University and put the parking lot behind? And I think that the reasons they cited for that were to increase walkability. I think it actually kind of does the opposite. I think what you do there, it would be a disservice to your residents to the north because it would be putting the active portion of the site closer to those north and east adjacent residents. Right now, with the way the building sits, the building itself serves as a buffer between the active portion of the site where the cars come and go and the parking lot is. The building itself buffers the north adjacent residents from the active portion. To flip it around would do the opposite. Also, I think you wouldn't be able to take advantage of that green space that we're showing at the front of the property there. Which again, I think, it could be a nice asset to the city to have that green space up front. But in access, we're limited to that right in, right out access at that location. And we wouldn't be able to make site access work if the building was placed at the front of the lot. There's some drainage issues as well.
I would just kind of like to touch on the fence. I know that you said that you were amenable to putting up a fence. I talked to a few of the residents that have kind of contacted me, and I only heard one person, Mr. Lowe, who I don't think he's here anymore. But he was the one that did not want the fence there. Would there be the possibility to build the fence on both north and east side to kind of run everything? And then maybe even have some buy-in from the resident as to, a fence that, kind of give them a little bit of a buy-in on this design.
So I'm not sure that I understand your question. Currently we're showing a 6-foot privacy fence on the north property line.
Yep.
We're not showing a fence along the entirety of the east property line. There's approximately 80 feet of existing white vinyl fence on that east property line that we intend to leave in place. And then the gap would be filled in by evergreen plantings. What you're asking is, would we consider installing a fence along the entirety of the east property line?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Wolf, do I understand hours of operation 5 a.m. to 11 p.m.?
Those are our general hours of operation. We've got a district manager in the audience. He's nodded yes.
Thank you. I do have a question for Brian. Is that appropriate?
He's the applicant.
Brian? You and I had a substantive conversation just last week. Over 90 minutes, as a matter of fact, and I appreciated your time and your candor. Were there some other possibilities for utilization of the existing building that we brought up?
That was our first goal when we knew we had a problem, because to demolish a building, there's
pricey, isn't it?
It's expensive, and there's downtime where there's no rent coming in. So of course, we want to avoid demolishing buildings that have function. And unfortunately, what we have here now, we never knew that back in 1972 when it was built, but it's become functionally obsolete and out of favor with what tenants or users are looking for. So some of those things that are, like I mentioned, ADA and elevators and just the fact that there's an upper level requires stairs to access, it really limits who we can put in there, or tenants it limits the number of tenants that have any interest at all at going up to the second level. So we did look at, can we convert this to multifamily? Now that kind of a conversion is happening across the country. It's generally happening with some Class A office towers. And so that helps some of these bigger cities, because they can decrease their office space while and that helps fill up office buildings. And then people can live next to those office buildings and still have a reason to want to be close in proximity. So larger cities, you're thinking New York, Chicago, some of those projects have worked. I don't know that they've been that profitable, but they've converted. And the cost to convert is really tremendous on a building like this because you have to build out floor plans, plumbing, HVAC, ventilation, all of these things are not set up for an apartment. So it's really redoing the entire interior of the building. Costs were $250,000 to $350,000 per unit. To justify that type of cost, you need rents well above $2,200 a month. So
I think we also talked about utilizing the building for a potential municipal utilization.
Yeah.
And you said that idea had some potential merit. Moving the city administration offices and the police department to that building, which would be closed at 5 o'clock, not open during the weekends, not open until 11 o'clock. And I think you indicated that that could be a viable alternative.
I think that's something we wanted to consider. And in our economic development meetings, we addressed that many months ago. I was hoping to get a lot further along if there was interest from the city by now. But that certainly was something worth considering. And again, at that time, we were considering as many viable options as we possibly could. So I don't think I've seen enough interest or any interest in that idea, but you're right. That would have been a consideration.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Thank you.
Questions for staff, Trey, regarding your recommendation, or AJ, regarding your recommendation, regarding staff's recommendation, I suppose. Talking about the comprehensive plan review, the second item is supporting strategic redevelopment along key corridors, including University Avenue. That was one of the reasons I assumed that went into the recommendation for supporting this. So what is the strategy for redevelopment along University Avenue?
And AJ, I don't know if you want to add to anything that I say, but feel free. Just overall,
It's
creating more.
It's not a gotcha question.
No, and I'm following up. Just making sure that each property in a commercial zone, mixed use zone, has a full use and is at the highest considered capability of that property. As it sits right now, it's not quite sitting at that highest capability and could be utilized for more in the community. And strategically planning, making sure that the community is getting a higher tax return on commercial development and things like that. That was what really what we kind of considered when looking through when looking through everything, looking through all the documentation, taking in all the information.
I'd add just a couple more comments, I guess. Thank you, Trey. And in addition, I guess the cities tend to try to send signals to developers of how they want to see properties developed based off of the future land use map, which is commercial in this instance. So a rezoning of commercial from the mixed use would potentially be appropriate depending on adjacent rezonings potentially as well. The comprehensive plan, as you noted, discusses walkability, mixed use, the road diet, along with the corridor study done previously. And then, of course, most recently, the zoning code update, which talks about setbacks and allowed uses, in this case, a conditional use permit under the current zoning map, which, again, this property's got a future land use map designation of commercial, but it's currently zoned mixed use. So there's a little bit of differential there between intended uses on our long-term strategic planning and the current zoning map of what's allowed today. Beyond that, I think we also talk about for the greater University corridor, the transition of existing single-family properties into eventual mixed-use development. And I think that's a key part of the city's need to evaluate going forward is how do you eventually make those conversions as those opportunities arise to create that commercial and that mixed use in the fashion that's discussed in the comprehensive plan.
There's a lot of factors.
Fair.
It's not clearly defined. The district that it's zoned in is urban central. And so that's defined as a district that's known for its walkability and main street feel, right?
Correct.
Okay. Walkability. To be clear, the transportation goal that's listed in this staff report, it says to create a connected sidewalk network, especially along arterial roads, schools, parks, trails, and retail. The chapter in the comprehensive plan is complete streets, correct?
Correct.
And the recommendation is to actually implement the complete streets policy, which is quoted in, part of that is quoted in the comprehensive plan. And if I could read part of that policy purpose, which says the complete streets policy establishes guiding principles and practices to assist in the creation of an equitable, balanced, and effective transportation system that encourages walking, bicycling, and transit use to improve health, economic vitality, and reduce adverse environmental impacts. What are the adverse environmental impacts, do we think?
Of what is being proposed?
Correct. It's not a quiz. I assume that if we're being encouraged to walk more and bicycle and use transit, I think it's encouraging us to drive less.
Right.
Right. And so if one of the factors to encourage this project is to, build sidewalks, but that comes at the cost of a project that creates a tremendous amount of single
auto-oriented,
vehicle
correct.
traffic. It's sort of conflicting. Would you agree?
Yes, I can agree with that. I guess how that was interpreted during staff review was currently how the sidewalk sits is right up against the curb, which is in most cases considered less walkable on 70th. And some of the changes that were proposed and some of the sidewalk amenities, it would create a bit more of a safer and more welcoming sidewalk environment. And with additions that Casey's has talked about throughout their presentations, just making a more comfortable feel for other alternative modes of transport. And although the project does focus on auto-oriented transport, that's where they get a lot of their business. Meeting not only that auto-oriented transport, but also making sure to still elevate other forms of transport. And through review of the site plan, that's what staff saw meeting that goal in that regard.
Any other questions for staff?
I don't know if I have a question for staff, but so there were questions about different questions at different points in time about what the site might otherwise be used for if Colby did their due diligence. I'm just curious. I've not heard from the Economic Development Committee, and I think that the responsibility and role of the Economic Development Committee is to recruit developers to come into our community. So is there a report from Economic Development Committee on what you've been doing to help developers come in and see that as a potential site?
I can speak to that. So could perhaps the mayor and AJ. This is a problematic issue. Sitting on the Economic Development Committee, I recall a meeting, and Mr. Mayor, you may recall it as well, where the discussion was that we needed to not talk about the Casey's store coming to Windsor Heights. I believe that the rationale that was given at that time was that it would be negative, viewed as negative. I thought that was odd when that statement was made. I think better transparency would have been key at that time so that we wouldn't have the resident uproar. With regard to economic development significant, the Economic Development Committee was strengthened and very much in the mix of getting our new 105 apartment building on 63rd and University. So that was one of those issues. We were not necessarily given the opportunity to speak to this particular parcel with regard to redevelopment. It had already, apparently, as we've heard already, 11 months in the program that this was going on. And the developers saw fit to take the lead of the city. I was not aware that the city was wanting to keep this silent for as long as what it was. Other opportunities that we had are pretty few and far between. The parcel of land that we're talking about doesn't lend itself to many different businesses. There was talk about not just a convenience store, but there was discussion about a Dollar General store of some kind, which was believed to have caused even more traffic congestion. I think we can see that on the traffic map that they had. But as far as looking at anything else, it seemed to me in those meetings that the decision had already been made.
So I don't think you answered my question, which was, and anybody from economic development can certainly answer this question, but I mean, I'm consistently always talking to different developers and having conversations about potential opportunity, come to Windsor Heights and have, look at, and I know, for example, like anything with housing and all the housing development, you got to have, probably 4 acres of land minimum. I mean, there are all of these, because you got to be able to return the investment, right? For example. So there are limited, as you said, there are limited, but what are we doing in Economic Development Committee on a regular basis? We should be shopping around whatever opportunities and then sharing with our developers. That's what I see our role as. I don't sit on economic development, but that's my role as a council member. So I'm just trying to figure out what, if anything, Economic Development Committee was doing to identify then other, or what else do you have in the mix of any, because we do have some open lots that we need to develop. So, and I've been very involved in, the university and 63rd property. So, and I don't sit on economic development. So I'm just curious. If you don't have an answer, that's fine.
I could chime in on a couple, I guess.
That's not really what we're talking about right now. We're talking about approving the site plan for Casey's. So,
But there have been several questions about whether or not it's the appropriate use or whether or not they've done their due diligence. So I'm trying to figure out whether or not, I'm trying to get to that question too, which is, did we do our role and our part in trying to help facilitate that? So I do think it's relevant.
Teresa, I think in terms of Colby owning that property and looking to develop or redevelop what was there, I know in conversations I've had with Brian, I've kind of gone through the whole list of, had you thought about this and what about this? And what about multifamily residential? And what about, and so he and I have had that conversation. And I do feel like what I got back was, yeah, we thought about that. We wanted to do that, but that didn't work out, or we didn't. And so I felt like I exhausted my questions in terms of the different types of things. And I went high and low with a whole range of things, but something about that configuration of size of lot and what some of the things I was suggesting would have actually created more traffic because, you know, drive-throughs and all. So I reluctantly said, okay, yeah, you've answered all my questions. But I think in terms of our incentives and how we subsidize other projects and how we think about bringing other folks in, I think that there's a lot of other places where we can now start to focus our gaze, particularly as we talk about the university corridor. That's my hope.
Thank you.
Opportunity to speak to any of this. I'm on the economic development committee. Or is it not time?
Yeah, Brian. Come on up.
I just want to make sure it's clear that we, on the Economic Development Committee, our goal is to bring business to Windsor Heights, and it's a spot to share what we know is going on. Many of those meetings, I share quite a bit of information because Colby's hold quite a bit of the property in Windsor Heights. When I share what's going on, I don't want anyone thinking that that I would say, hey, I don't think this is a use that people will appreciate and we need to keep it quiet. When we're in the negotiation of what is coming to that site, it's irresponsible. Like, I'm sharing that with the Economic Development Committee in confidence that, you know, in real estate, if it gets out that Topgolf is looking at this site versus that site, and the agreement isn't signed and the soil hasn't been tested, we cannot be sharing that with the community. It is not, don't share because I think people would be upset. That is far from the truth, and that is misleading. And I hope that that is understood, that it's responsible real estate practice. And anyone on that committee should understand that you don't spread the word as to who's considering going where, who's looking at what. And those are the times to talk about, is this a good use? What concerns do we have? And what other opportunities exist? And from other cities, I get information that is very helpful when it comes to so-and-so is looking for space. This tenant is looking for space. I get a lot of help actually to keep properties leased and developed. And I did not have options from the Economic Development Committee leading up to this. So I just want to be clear. I'm not trying to force a square peg in a round hole. I'm trying to use the Economic Development Committee to discuss what's best for the city and what we can bring. I hope that is understood.
Thank you, Brian.
Yep.
I just want to say that I had multiple conversations with Brian and Casey's at various different, and Chris, just because I received a lot of emails and comments from residents, and I wanted to make sure that I asked the correct questions. And like Joseph, I went through the laundry list of places, and the property there is just, it's a weird size, it's a weird configuration, it's at a weird spot. There are so many wrongs with that, you know, as far as for certain businesses, that there's only certain businesses that actually are able to really go in there and kind of thrive, for lack of a better term. This is not something that, you know, we have just not talked to Colby about. I am not on the Economic Development Committee, but because of the emails, I wanted to go through and exhaust all the options and just actually wrap my head around how we came to this decision. And not that Casey's is a good or a bad, you know, that's irrelevant right now. It was more, can you help me wrap my head around the property and the problems with that property, and why these things would not be good investments for developers, for the city, for, all these different places. So I do think that there was a lot of talk. I know for myself, it was a lot of talking and trying to figure out and doing some research and studying. So I think that there was a lot of work that went into this just to see what else we could bring in to the city. So just kind of wanted to make sure that people knew that as council who are not on the economic development, we actually did look at things and talk to Casey's and Colby as well.
Other discussion amongst council? Okay. Well. The considerations of council is not whether a project is popular, as this is not. It is whether or not it meets the zoning requirements and is in the vision of the comprehensive plan. I do have a question. Joseph, how long did you serve on planning and zoning?
3 or 4 years and 5 on Board of Adjustments.
Okay. And then Lauren, you were on planning and zoning? Do you recall, was there ever a time when city council did not follow a recommendation of planning and zoning on a site plan?
Yeah, I think so. A couple times. I mean, it is a recommending body, right? So their job is to do what they believe is their due diligence within their purview and then recommend to the council how to proceed. Of course, the council can then gather much more information and make a larger decision, just like the BOA's decision at the beginning of the process is to focus on, whether or not the use is there or the variance should be granted because of their purview. So yeah, I think there have been times, particularly when I was on planning and zoning.
Can I second that? Because I remember those being here with the dais.
Good. Do you recall the times?
No, but I probably have notes somewhere.
Okay. Well, I'll just tell you, in the past 10 years, in 2014, from 2014 until 2023, there were 14 recommendations of approval, planning and zoning, and council approved all of them. I can go down the list. I looked them all up, just for your reference. So you understand. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mike, I made some notes because I knew it was going to be a long night. And so one of the great things about public service is that you get to be thankful for some things. And one of them is I'm thankful I sit next to Susan so I can take her example and write things down when I need to write things down. And I wanted to say thanks to all of our citizens for all the input we've gotten. As anytime we have a controversial issue in our community, right? We hear from a lot of people, emails, phone calls, grocery store, and a lot of really sincere and thoughtful conversation, which I really appreciated. I didn't feel any negative attacks. I felt a lot of passion in those things, a lot of creative solutions, and a lot of admonishments to do our job, right? Also think that Colby has done a good job trying to be exhaustive of all their options. And my conversations with Brian have shown that through the due diligence. And I hope that you'll take our citizen suggestions for other locations that you have within the community of things that you guys can do or types of businesses that we're looking for as we look at what the future is. But I know that lot just doesn't work with a lot of things. And I know our Economic Development Committee has a charge to, do work and help to incentivize businesses, and Colby has a commercial enterprise to run, and we don't own that land, right? So it wasn't our decision as a city. We didn't say, hey, bring Casey's here. No offense against Casey's. I like your pizza, as other people have said. And I really don't think that Casey's is ideal. It wasn't what I thought of when Windsor Heights was gonna grow up. That's what we're gonna have on that corner. And Brian's heard me say that. But that's not to say that it shouldn't go there. But I was glad that it wasn't gonna go at 63rd and University. And I think we should continue the streak we have of creating unique opportunities and varied businesses in our town. I want people to have a cool place to come, right? Make us more of a destination to come throughout the metro. But with that being said, the question that's before us tonight, even though the mayor alluded to always following what the P and Z said, is a part of this process from the Board of Adjustments to the Planning and Zoning to us. And so far I've stayed out of that because I believe those two bodies need to have complete autonomy in doing their work. And then once they finish, I read their minutes and read their processes. And we have rules and guidelines for a reason. We make our sets of plans that we want all of our businesses and applicants to conform with for a reason. And just because I don't like something doesn't mean that that's a good reason to say it shouldn't happen in our city. We can't move the bar because we don't agree with something, right? Or whatever the possible result might be. And I think that small d democracy goes away the moment we try to just start changing the rules or ignore the standards because we don't like where things are going without actually having a formalized process we're all participating in it. So I hope that Colby and Casey's hear the feedback that you've gotten from us here at the dais and from our citizens throughout this process. We want to work toward having a green future, right? So you've heard everybody talk about those things. So we want to make that a real possibility. So we want you to make a real effort in incorporating is every green practice you can possibly think of into a project if this is approved, and really strongly consider putting in EV charging stations. We understand your argument. We just don't believe you. And I think putting the conduit in, that's a great step. And we know we have to make some compromises. We also want to have a well and healthy and walkable community. So here's when we say we want thoughtful, intentional design around that, that promotes walkability. We love our city and we don't like eyesores, which is why we put the parameters there that we do. And we don't want the main drag to be something that's unaesthetically pleasing. So think about what those parameters are and what we've asked you about those and work with us. Think about the store you put in Pella right off the square. Think about how you put the store on Drake neighborhood or the one in Ingersoll. Think about what that means for those communities and give us something that's unique and useful for us. Work with us as we do that. And respect what we're trying to do as a city, please. And as Michael said, think about including our citizens in the process. This could have worked out a whole lot differently if you would have included them more at the beginning and throughout this process, and this could have had a much better outcome. But to the previous question, we have a question before us that I don't see any legal or meritorious reason to vote against. If that makes sense. That's my 2 cents.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Lauren Campbell,
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Teresa Harms,
Yes.
Susan Skerrys.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
No.
6B, thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay. There's more.
Mayor, can we clarify, resolution? Were there any other modifications you guys wanted on that resolution? Because I know there was some discussion. I just don't want to miss that moment. Talking about
Like the fence, the easement,
Mm-hmm.
do we need to put that into that
I would
resolution?
recommend doing that. I mean, you've got the staff recommendations, but I know there was conversation about that, so I just didn't want to miss the moment to include that if that was your wish.
I will amend I will make a motion to include those things that were discussed previously, including the fencing,
Public art.
and the art,
The signage,
the signage.
the rest of the staff
EV
recommendations.
And then the staff recommendations are on page 113 and 114.
Yeah, that's right.
Can we ask them to have at least have a conversation on solar panels? Can, thoughts on including asking Casey's to have the conversation in good faith about solar panels?
Yep, of course. Solar engagement in our community, I think.
And engagement in our community, what you said? Solar engagement, sorry.
I think.
So just for clarification, the the modified resolution then is to approve the site plan per staff recommendations that are included in the staff report, plus require a to be determined easement for public art that is amenable both to the city and to Casey's as far as sight lines and available space, to include the monument sign as conceptually shown with the WH, to include conduit runs for the future EV charging, and to have good faith conversations with city staff about solar on the roof. And yeah, I think there was
And the fence on the east side.
Continuing the fence on the east side.
all the way through the residential properties that weren't necessarily in favor of it.
I was thinking on the front, because the property to the east, it has it partially up. So continue that, so that we don't have a natural path of people cutting through that person's yard into the Casey's property on foot.
To work with staff and
Yep.
determine the appropriate fencing on the east side.
There's a bunch of stuff.
You got all that, Aaron?
I do.
And and engagement and city activities, city events.
Community involvement.
Community involvement. Thank you.
Community involvement, Aaron.
I don't know that that's
Come
a
on, Aaron.
requirement that you can put on this as a site plan.
Good,
Fair enough.
good faith
But I
involvement.
hope.
They-
that
We've
yes,
we've got
it's
Aaron's
part of the
number. He's interested. He's expressed interest. We've got his phone number, right?
Yeah.
Is that your amended motion then?
It is.
And I seconded
Someone.
all of that.
Susan seconds.
Do we need to redo the roll call?
Yes, please.
Redo
Okay.
the roll call.
Lauren Campbell,
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes. We just need a fence. Give me a fence.
Fences make great neighbors.
You were on the fence?
You just needed a fence.
I just need EV charging stations.
Oh. You get conduit now.
Well,
All right, six B, consideration of first reading of ordinance number 2024-01.
Second.
AJ,
I'll take
Aaron,
I'll take this one. Okay, so, as you know, we've been working towards some enforcement mechanisms with the rental housing code. And, so this was one item that we wanted to be able to use if we've got, dwelling units that are not meeting code requirements. And so the Iowa code requires this language to actually be part of the city's ordinances in order for this to be an enforcement mechanism. So that is the reason for the language.
got it.
questions, discussion?
I had some questions earlier. Adam answered them for me today, so I'm good with it.
Roll call.
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Joseph Jones, Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yes.
Six C, consideration of South 68th Street design contract.
Move to approve.
Second.
AJ,
Just note, you've approved you've had held and approved the CIP this evening. So we're planning on getting started on the design work for 68th Street South. So that is School Street to University. In fact, BMI has actually been out there doing some survey work already. We have hung notifications on property owners, doorknobs. I think Jason's received one as a resident. So that'll be moving forward. We have the proposed schedule in here. That would be 60% design review in June 2024, moving on to August, 90% design bidding in October, and construction being awarded in December or January, with construction initiated in April or May of 2025. This is approval for the design costs, which are just under $250,000. Happy to answer your questions you've got. Otherwise, Justin is also here.
any questions? Roll call?
Susan Skiris.
Yes.
Joseph Jones.
Yes.
Michael Libby.
Yes.
Lauren Campbell.
Yes.
Teresa Harms.
Yeah.
Six E, discussion on 73rd Street reconstruction. AJ,
Adam, could you pull up the one of the flyers? 73rd Street flyer, I think is probably a good one to start with. Just want to call to City Council's attention here as we're getting ready to consider bids for 73rd Street North, which is University to Hickman. That reconstruction project would start potentially in the very near future. For quick timelines here, April 1st, you'll be considering bids, and then there's an initiation date of honor before May 6th. So city staff needs to meet with the presumed selected contractor after that April 1st date, and then construction could begin as soon as later that month. And so we just had a tight window with kind of the DOT leading the bid process and some delays in getting the state approval to for SHPA and getting that bid out. And so we've got plans to send a mailing out to property owners on 73rd Street yet this week, letting them know of the intentions for possible construction. You know, be careful with our verbiage here because you haven't accepted a bid. Showing them the staging. So this is the 6 different phases of construction that are proposed for 73rd Street. And then after we hold that contractor meeting and understand whether their intention is to start on the south side or the north side of the project, on a little bit more about their process, we'll hold a neighborhood meeting with folks so that we can have that conversation and explain in a little bit more detail and listen to what they've got to say about that construction process. Jason and Public Works have ordered physical signs that would be alerting drivers to the 73rd Street construction, likely starting soon. That would be placed at University and 73rd and Hickman at 73rd. Hopefully that will go up next week. Just wrapping up the design of those. Also just want to call attention 73rd Street access. So the detour route, and there's another flyer in your packet there, would be to 63rd. And that would be for the duration of the construction season this year. We would reopen 73rd Street over the winter period for through traffic, and then close it back down again for through traffic and reroute it onto 63rd until construction is completed. Local traffic would be able to access 73rd all except for the current stage of construction of the project. Residents would be parking on the east side of the road there on one of the adjoining east-west roads. On the north side of the street, there's no parking along that entire stretch on the south side. And if there's anybody with accessibility needs on 73rd Street during their staging, we would place ADA signage, handicap parking as close to their house as they could on that east-west road. For the south part of the construction, you know, there are a number of businesses that will be impacted. For council consideration, we can require the contractor through a change order to place some additional signage there at Hickman or on University, alerting drivers to the fact that those businesses are open. Most of them have 2 driveways, access onto 73rd, and so there'll be at least a gravel access to their property at all times. There's a couple instances where there's commercial properties that only have 1 access point onto 73rd. The reconstruction of that immediate section in front of their driveway would likely take place during a weekend, during off-peak hours, to try to limit the impact to that property owner. But inevitably, road reconstruction projects are painful, and there will be traffic pattern changes as a result of this project for the next 300 construction days. Trail closure. Again, the south side of this reconstruction project will impact the trail. So stage, is it 1A and 1B? Did I get that right, Justin? And 2. Thank you, and 2. So the trail will be closed during those construction phases. There's not a great alternative route. We don't necessarily want to put signage up to route people onto the street or onto sidewalks. So our current thought process, open to council feedback, is to place some signage probably on College and maybe south of University, alerting people of their trail closures and giving them a trail map just so that they're aware of what their options are. If they choose to use the street or the sidewalk, that's their option. But unfortunately, there's just not an immediate adjacent trail option for folks to choose from. With that, Justin, any important points that I missed that you wanted to cover?
No, I think the biggest thing is our short turnaround from when we receive the bids and the start date or the late start date. I want to for May 6th, so they start for that. That's absolutely last day they can start, so.
And you have promised this will come in under engineering's estimate, right?
I don't believe I said that.
Just a quick question. I'm sure that this has been done, but I just want to make sure that the school and parents will receive communication for any closure well in advance in the digital backpack.
Excellent comments. The intention is to work with the school on that phasing in particular to make sure that we're not closing it during school periods, but
Just thinking about even if,
yeah, I think notices too would be appropriate.
well, even during the stage
Really.
1A, yeah,
All of
all
it's
of it,
gonna
yeah,
affect
because you're
the
gonna have
whole
people
thing.
that drive in from wherever. Since it's such a great school, it attracts people across West Des Moines District, so.
Another point is that I all witnessed this year. I don't know when construction shutdown is gonna end, start, and then when it begins again, or startup begins in the spring, so. It's anybody's guess, we'll have to make a determination as we finish a stage, as how much time's left, and then open it back up for the.
Should have done it this year.
Oh, and I should note, Adam has bought us a website. We will keep, it's a very short domain name. What is it? 73rd, WH73rd.
WH73rd.com.
So that'll be on the sign out on the street there, so that if people want to follow the updates, they can quickly get that and remember it. Hopefully that when they're safely parked, look at the website and see what the status is.
It was free. They give it to you.
Adam, you'll want to maybe inquire, so Clive does every Friday, the school does an email for just our school. I think it's called Clive Live, with the updates and kind of what to expect for the next week, or if there's any school updates. So I think that would probably be, I mean, they're gonna do what they're gonna do, but that would be an appropriate, and that's similar to the different types of things they include in that. I'll forward mine so you can see it.
That's all I have unless there's any questions.
Questions? Okay. Thank you, AJ. And Justin. 7A reports. My report is in the packet. We had a great turnout this morning. Great job, Susan.
All I did was email.
Great job, Susan. Arms.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I did Read Across America at Clive Learning Academy on Friday. And as a mom and a council member, so that was fun to the preschoolers. Otherwise, I got nothing other than the legislative sessions kicking my backside. That's it.
Campbell.
I attended the DART budget workshop and saw what the service level changes might be depending on how the city of Des Moines proceeds with the franchise fee that is available to them. And saw what those potential cuts look like. Then also, I attended the Giggle Gala on Friday, which is the fundraiser for the Des Moines Children's Museum, and where they raised, I think, $14,000 for their programming. And they also had a lot of their children's museum like activities there for guests to do. And there was a challenge to, if you did all of them, you could potentially win some prizes. So it was really neat to see the museum stuff up close and in person. That's it.
Libby.
My only report is that I held a listening post this past Saturday at Grounds for Celebrations. I do every month. And so I was visited by a number of residents from outside of Windsor Heights as well as in Windsor Heights. A topic of discussion was 73rd Street. For the most part, a real positive conversation with people from Urbandale as well as Windsor Heights. And then, of course, the conversation turned to Casey's General Store. I was simply listening to my employers, who are the citizens of Windsor Heights. And I just need to say on a personal level, sleepless nights have been part of my routine here lately. this morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, I was still thinking about our vote tonight. And so I didn't take that lightly. But I'm grateful that there were some amendments made to that motion and we can move forward. That's it, sir.
Jones,
Nothing beyond, we have a DART commission meeting tomorrow.
Scaries,
So I attended Food Truck Alley with Lauren and AJ on February 28th to discuss some of the current concerns we had at the special events meeting, as well as the last council meeting. We're looking at some good options and waiting to hear back about the costs. I reached out to Clive Parks and Rec Department about their food trucks and how they handle some of the chamber events they host, including the costs and fees they charge for food trucks. I'll provide that information to the special events group here in the next few days. Big thank you to Joseph, Adam, Mike, the police department, the fire department, Jason with Public Works, and the many volunteers who attended the Read a Book event at Windsor School this morning. It was amazing to see the library was standing room only, so I would say we probably had over 50, maybe 75 volunteers. I saw many Windsor Heights residents and event volunteers at today's reading, along with the kids that attended our movies in the park. I think I will now be known as flower-loving Miss Susan. I don't really know how I got that, but I could be worse. We'll just go with it. Windsor School was able to exceed the requested donations. So each student will be given a book in either English or Spanish to take home. So thanks also to everyone who donated to provide these books to each student, and understand that the fire department and maybe even the police department read to the Clive Elementary School on Friday as well with Teresa. So thank you to, all the departments that kind of worked together to make sure that we were able to kind of show up in force. I think we had the most people there, So then also, let's see, Lauren, Adam, and I'm just along for the ride on this. So the two of them have worked hard to get the WAM race information up online for sign up. So if you're a runner, you have running friends, please share this race info so your friends can put this race down on the calendar. I have a lofty goal for this year's race, and I will make sure we get there. So help me out by sharing this on social media and by word of mouth. Let's see, we're working on having the parade sign up open soon, which would be great for us. Earth Day is coming up. It's on social media with the sponsors. You can now sign up for the free birdhouse painting. The event is April 20th. If I haven't said this 1,010,000 times, I'll say it again. Stream cleanup is from 8:30 to 11:30. The event itself is from 12 to 3 at the Community Event Center. Lauren and I continue to plan the special events that we have on the calendar, including Fall Festival, but I think we have the majority of our big items booked now and sponsored already this year for Fall Festival. So we don't have a special events meeting next Friday. We'll reconvene when we receive answers to our questions from the engineers, contractors in regards to the food truck alley. Then just wanted to give a chamber update about sponsorship. Tiffany and the Chamber's TRC crew are still working hard on gaining sponsorships for both Urbandale events and Windsor Heights events, to include Sample Urbandale, the Central Iowa Business Conference, Windsor Heights special events, and of course the foundation's events like the Ice Cream Social. So I'm volunteering Tiffany to answer questions if anyone has any sponsorship questions, as she has all the answers, voluntold, I guess I should say. And I just want to point out that the Windsor Heights sponsorships are not only just for businesses, but for anyone who wants to sponsor, say, face painting, Light the Heights, or the Ice Cream Social Sunday type thing. So if you're celebrating grandma's birthday, loved one anniversaries, or any other special events, the chamber would love to help you pick out a sponsorship that works best for your celebration. So then, since I have been taking the dogs on the walks because it's been so nice, reminder that yard waste pickup doesn't start up again until April 1st. So Monday, April 1st is when it starts back up again. I see some bags and containers out there already on the road, so they won't get picked up. But Metro Waste has opened up the yard waste sticker sales now. So at least we're one step closer to pickup. We just have to wait for April 1st. So that's it.
And TRC ends when? 16?
Monday.
Monday.
People will wrap up their final sales by the end of the month.
Thank you.
AJ, anything from you?
Nothing further.
All right. Item 8, closed session. Closed session pursuant to Iowa Code 2017 Sub 3, negotiating sessions, strategy meetings of public employers, mediation, and the deliberative process of arbitrators shall be exempt from the provisions of Chapter 21. Motion.
So moved.
Can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes, please.
5-minute break.
Going to vote on that first? Can we vote first?
Yeah, we gotta vote.
Probably vote on that first.
Roll call.
Yes.
Oh, now you don't call me for sure.